So even though we're talking about after the flood, I wanted to set the stage for what it was like before the flood. On day two, that says that the earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. So day two, we've got this formless earth. It's completely covered in water, and we know water is formless. It can take on any shape. And then there was light, but there was no sun. It was God illuminated it, just as he's going to do with the new heaven and new earth that we read about in Revelation. Well, on day two, then it says, then let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. And God made the expanse and separated the waters which were below the expanse from the waters which are above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven. And it was evening, it was morning, the second day. One of the questions is, what then was below this water? Was there already land below the water, or was it just all water? Well, let's look at day three, because I think it really gives us some guidance. Day three says, then let the waters below the heavens be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. Well, notice it doesn't say that land was created on day three. It said, let it appear. And the dry land, the word in the Hebrew, Yabashah, is the same word not only used here, but used elsewhere. It's the same word used when they step off the ark onto dry land. It's the same word used when Moses parted the Red Sea. All right. And it's the same word used when the Jordan was parted. And in each of those cases, there was always land already below the waters. So I think it's pretty clear that there was land on day two below the waters. Now, why is this significant? So I think it was more of this picture. There was water, but there was land below it. Now, why is this important? It was because there was no sun at this time. There was no moon. So there wasn't any gravity effects, shifting tides. There was no thermal gradients creating wind. And so you would have a perfectly calm water. Well, when sediment settles out in perfectly calm water, it's going to be very flat, very level. That's consistent with the fact that the Bible makes no mentions of mountains or hills. So we think that it's very uniform topography. Now, that's important for some other things. And what we're leading to is how things were different after the flood, particularly how the climate was different. So we know on day three, he also produced vegetation. And after producing vegetation, he said that it was very good. Well, I believe that he produced very good soil. The Bible talks about, Jesus uses the parable of the good soil. So if he's going to make the land to produce vegetation for all the animals, I think he would clearly put it as very good soil. All right, so what do we know later? At the end of the creation week, he says, be fruitful and multiply. And he says this, fill the earth and subdue it and rule over the earth. Then God said, behold, I've given every plant yielding seed that is on the surface of all the earth, and every tree which has fruit yielding seed, it shall be food for you. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the sky, and to everything that moves on the earth, which has life, I've given every green plant for food. And it was so. So, a couple of things. Before the flood, God created all the creatures to be vegetarians. And he told them to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Well, that would be a lot easier to do, given that it talked previously about he gathered the waters into seas. So that says that these water bodies were the ones that were isolated. It was the earth that was continuous. So the earth we see today is not the earth before the flood. I think the earth would have been predominantly land, so that these animals would have all this green vegetation to grow on, and this land would be the one that's continuous. So if God told you, to tell all the animals to be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, but they can only eat plants, how would you make it? How would you design the earth? Would you design it with 70% of it being water? Would you design the land being 50% of it rock as it is today, which is not very productive for vegetation? Would you make it mountains, which causes temperature fluctuations to where then you have arid regions and you would have winds, you'd have erosion? Or would you design it to where all the land could produce lush vegetation? So again, I think it's very clear the land was very uniform. Yet we continually see this types of pictures of the Garden of Eden. And what's wrong with these pictures? Well, in all of these, you've got mountains, you've got beautiful waterfalls, but waterfalls such as these in the bottom left and the bottom right, that's an erosion feature. That's a picture of destruction. Erosion is a destructive process. That's a plunge pool. So you've got cutting, erosion cutting the stream, and then you've got a plunge pool, which is extremely destructive to God's very good earth. I don't think that's a picture of creation until after the flood. And it's beautiful today, but God's ways are not our ways. So this is what we learn in Genesis 2. It says, this is the account of heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that the Lord made earth and heaven. It goes on to say, for the Lord had not sent rain upon the earth. Well, we get rain today, but it tells us it didn't rain then. So how did it water it? It says, but a mist used to rise from the earth and not water a part of the earth, not water local areas. It watered the whole surface of the earth. Now, one of the theories early on in creation science was this canopy of saturated air above. That's not what it says. It says a mist rose every day. So how do you get a mist that would rise over all the earth, and the earth is predominantly land? Well, it's very easy. If you've got fairly uniform, shallow soils, which had been covered in water, but that water has infiltrated into the subsurface, you're going to have a shallow water table. And that shallow water table, water does move uphill. All you have to do to find out if water can move uphill, we always think, oh, water moves downhill. No, water moves uphill. All you have to do is take one of your tissues out of your kitchen, one of your paper towels, and dip it in a bowl of water, and you'll watch it rises up the up the cloth. Well, so what do we have? I think what we have is that you have a uniform topography, no wind, no rain, no erosion, mild temperature, daily temperature changes, very mild, such that Adam and Eve could walk around without clothes on and not freeze or anything else. It would have been a year-round continual growth. You wouldn't have any types of seasons, and it would have been perfect until sin entered. Once there's sin entered, then there's death, and the ground is cursed, and it's going to produce weeds and thorns, and there's going to be death. We're going to return to dust. So if there's no animal death before this time and no erosion, would we have animal fossils? Would we even have plant fossils if there's a continuous growing season? And then, because of man's sin, what happened? God sent a flood. And that's what we're going to talk about the rest of the day. But God gave us a promise. So when they exited the ark, Noah built an altar to the Lord and took every clean animal and every clean bird. We tend to think of it, well, he just sacrificed one or two animals. No, he took of every clean animal and every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. There's a reason it said it took them by sevens, the clean ones, so that he could offer one as a sacrifice. And God said, I will never again curse the ground on account of man, for the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth. And I'll never again destroy every living thing as I have done. While the earth remains, there will be seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night. Now you may think, okay, there's day and night. No, he's talking about temperature fluctuations. Now we have extreme temperature fluctuations between day and night. They wouldn't have had that before the flood. And so you see right there, climate change. The climate has changed drastically. Now there isn't this continual growing season all year long. There's seed time and harvest. There's seasons, and there's cold and there's hot, and summer and winter. So What we see today is not the key to the past. The past is the key to what we see today. And when you see a beautiful waterfall, just remember that's a picture of God's judgment.